Hello, it's Bonnie, and today I am going to be doing a shaker card. You remember the last video that I did? I did some gel printing using some Lisa Horton ink and some pigment powder. And so what I did with one of the first pieces is I made the shaker card. And I'm going to go ahead and make another one and show you what I did so that you can make this one as well. So first of all, I'm going to show you some of the products that I use, just so that you know. For the background bubbles, I used the 3D embossing folder. This is a slimline collection. It's called Layered Bubbles. And the stencil looks like, or the embossing folder looks like that. And I also used Tracey Hey, she designs for Lisa Horton. And I've made several things in my videos using these particular stamps. And I have not used up, I hadn't used up the jellyfish. So I actually made 2 jellyfish, and I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and make another card. If you want to see how I colored these up, there's another video. And it shows you really simply how I just basically did more inking, and then I just stamped on top of the ink. It was really easy and fun to do. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, let me show you what else. There's some other things too. I have in my collection, or stash, you want to call it, some iridescent sequins, and I'm also going to be using some Aqua ones. The ones that are in this one were much smaller. They were some leftover that I had, so it's going to be a little bit different, but not much. So the paper that I'm going to use from what I did make the other day is I'm going to be using this piece, and this one was a little bit wider, but it's not going to matter for what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and actually get started right now. And first thing I'm going to do is I am going to be embossing this paper. This paper, once it dries, is even more stiff, which makes it, I think, kind of good for whatever projects I want to do. So all you have to do is, obviously this paper is smaller than what this is, so I can select and choose what it is I'd like to do. For this other one, what I did is I decided I wanted the biggest bubble to be a place where I could put the jellyfish. So what I will do is probably something very similar, and I'm going to go ahead and put that. I can either choose that one, or I can flip it around and I could choose that one, but I really think I'm going to go this way for a reason, and that is because there's a little bit of pink on this, well, on this jellyfish, a little bit more than a little bit, and I have a tiny bit down here, and I thought I'm not going to use that for the bubble because it'll cover it up. So that's what I'm going to do. I am going to emboss that in my Big Shot. Now what I want to show you about my Big Shot, just so you know the plates, how to do it, get this out. I hadn't planned on showing you this. All right, so this is the, let me show you, this is the main plate. Oh, actually, this is the main plate, Essentials platform, and then I use this adapter, extended thin, and I'm using a longer one because there's a lot of dies I have that are longer, so I just use this one all the time. And this one shows you the plate set up for using a die, like a thin die. But when you go to use Lisa's Horton's embossing folders, they're thick, right? And so what you do is you use your Essentials platform. You use this thin extended, this doesn't have to be extended, but the thin die adapter, and then you use one plate. So basically this is a sandwich, okay? And then you put this on top and you run it through. Now I do have the longer plates that go this entire length, but I don't need that for this particular die, or not die, but embossing folder. And this works great. It doesn't mess up your die or anything, or your die cutting machine, because this is the plates you use for the Big Shot. So I'll be right back. Okay, there was one thing that I wanted to tell you that I thought was really helpful that I learned from the DT, the Lisa Horton DT, and that is your embossing folder. If you look at this to know which way up is up, especially when you have one that doesn't have a particular design to it, it's helpful to know that the back of this embossing folder, this part, is thinner than the front. So this is really considered the front. So the thickest part, or the, I don't know what you want to call it, flap, is thick. So you know to put it in that way. That means it'll emboss up. I usually always feel it, but just to let you know, I thought that was a great tip, that it's thicker for the top, thinner for the bottom. And that way the embossing part of it, this, usually what you do is you look at it and the part that pushes up is usually the bottom. So, which will be the de-embossing part, and this is the embossing part. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. I really wanted to tell you that. I thought that was a really helpful tip, that's how these are made. So I'll be right back. Okay, now I want to show you how cool these 3 de-embossing folders really are. And I just ran that through the machine, and you can see, look how cool that is. It's just really awesome. Now I really don't have to do anything to that if I don't want to. The other one was a little bit more white that I did, and so I did some highlighting around the bubbles, and I can show you that with a little bit on this anyway, but I just wanted you to see this thing, even the back side. This is a really cool embossing folder. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff together to continue. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of things that I did do. I don't know that it's necessary for this particular one, that I did on the back of this. Because it was mostly, like I said, it had more of a white background to it, and I wanted to highlight the bubbles a little bit more. So the first thing that I did was I pulled out the Cloud 9, Lisa Horton's Cloud 9 ink, and this one was the Tranquil Waters that I actually used to create this background, at least one of the 2 inks that I used. And what you can do, as you know with most inks, is you can squish them on acrylic or wherever you want to, and use that as a palette for a painting. And that works really, really great. And that's what I did for that first one. So I really want this a little bit, I shouldn't have put as much on. I really want this watered down. And the reason for that is I don't really want it wet, but I want it watered down. I don't want it to be as strong. And so what I did was I looked at the bubbles that are in the background that I would want to highlight. That was my intention. So for instance, like this one right here between those 2, it's more in the background. As you're going to see when I put this on, it's going to seem quite dark, but they do dry lighter. So if you want to highlight and make some of your bubbles in the background a little bit like they're shaded, you can do that by just using this watered down ink. It's like doing watercolor, obviously. And the other thing I like to do, which I didn't particularly do that a lot with the other one, is I actually kind of like highlighted some of the bubbles just by giving them shading on the edges. So you can see this one is even lighter because I'm not using as much of the ink. I have it, it's more the watered down. And so you can get different shading. And you don't have to, this doesn't have to be the background. It could be one in the front, which works really well too. But I'm just gonna randomly pick some of these to color in with this ink. I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to, I'm going to go ahead and keep this on my palette and make more paper with this little bit that I have on here. So this is what you can do if you want to highlight some of the bubbles. And you can see how that one's already drying up. But it will give you a little bit of shading, which is really kind of nice. And then also keep in mind, one of the things I did not do is you can either even use a sentiment in one of these bubbles because the sentiments in that set with the jellyfish, some of them, like there's one that says hello, you could put that in there. But you also have to remember, if you're going to make this into a shaker card, that wherever your shakers are going to be, like if they're in the bottom, you could put a sentiment down there, but it will be covered up for the majority of the time. So you have to think that way too, where you would put your sentiment so that the shakers don't always cover it up. For it to be revealed is kind of cool, but to be totally covered up is not so great. So I think I'm going to do, I just try to make it a little bit balanced, but it's like they can be whatever you want to be in terms of coloring these up. And you can see I really shouldn't have put that much ink on my, this is an acrylic. It's actually an acrylic. I was going to say it's a block, but it really wasn't. When I first started doing stamping, which is a long time ago, with the acrylic stamps or polymer stamps, they didn't have a big plate. And I found this at Goodwill. It is actually a magnetic frame. But it was just like the acrylic blocks, and it was big enough that I couldn't get a big block at that time, and that's what I found. So that's what that is from my stash. I think I'm going to do, I'm just looking at this overall, what looks like it would be more of a balanced look. I think I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to be done with that. What I am using is a water paintbrush. I'm not really into all the name brands and exactly what size to use and all that. I just paint. And I found that this does do a nice job at painting. All right, so basically then what you would do is you would let that dry. I think I might even put one down here. Again, I know a lot of these aren't going to really show because I'm going to have my shakers down there. But this needs to dry before you can do a whole lot of anything else. Although, I did do some wax. I put wax on here to show off some of the edges, but I think I did that after I did some embossing. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to have some, I'm going to show you that too really quick, even though this is wet. I use this embossing powder holographic from Ranger, and you have seen me use this before in other videos, but maybe not if you haven't seen some of my videos. So what I want to do, I'm going to make sure I got the right pen. I have an embossing pen, and what I'm going to do is some of these that are in here, I'm going to make sure I grab my paper too. Okay, so I'm just going to color some of these bubbles in because this will make it glittery. So I did want a few of my bubbles with glitter. There are other things you can do. I also have a paint, acrylic paint that works really well to do this with. I'm just going to show you how you can do this. A lot of people have embossing powder. So you saw me do that one color, and then you just pour this on there because it's embossing pen instead of a pad. And then I'm just going to put that on there, and then I'm going to heat set that. So I am going to do that with several, you can see that even by itself already, it's just already glittery. And it is going to stick on some of that behind. That's why I usually try to wait before I do that, but I'm going to go ahead. You can see in here some of the ones I did put the glitter on. I did put glitter on a couple of these. So I am going to go ahead and do that really quickly, add some of that, and then I'll heat set that off when I'm not on taping. I'm not going to do too many, I can't wait too long. This embossing pen doesn't stay juicy for very long. So I try to do a couple at a time, but not a lot because I don't want it to dry out. All right, let's get a couple down here, and then I'm going to go do that, and I'll be back. Let's get this one. And this one. The rest of them aren't going to really show up too much, like I said, because the shaker bits will be down there. All right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get those set, and I'll be back. Okay, so the next step that I did for the one that I showed you to begin with is I use Sizzix luster wax. Now I think that Lisa has said that she's also going to be getting, or she has wax. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen it yet. So I already have obviously a lot of wax that I need to use before it dries up. And so I put a little bit on my finger, and I'm never really sure exactly how it's going to go on here. And it looks like I have a bunch of embossing powder down here at the bottom. I'm going to use a different piece of paper. I really don't want that in it. Sorry about that. I don't need the glitter in with the wax. Okay, so I kind of like test it out on the sides. I always do it on the sides anyway. And it's going to go a little bit on the bubbles. It's not going to highlight it exactly like as you can see what I just did. But in the end, it all worked out for what I wanted to do in terms of highlighting it. I just wanted a little bit of the gold because the background, I use gold glitter paper. And I wanted it all to tie in together. So if you're going to use maybe a white glitter paper, you probably really don't need to use this, or if you don't use any glitter paper at all. It's just, I'm just trying to show you what I've done to try to add a little bit. It's kind of like antiquing it, but I am using the wax instead, and you don't have as much of control over this wax this way. And it's okay, it's just what I'm doing. I know sometimes I get people come in, oh, you should have done it this way, or you could have done it this way. And I think there's different ways you can do it. It's just not particularly always the way that I do it. Doesn't mean it's bad or good, whatever. All right, so I'm gonna add a little bit more. I'm trying to get that kind of gold look to it. And this works fine with that embossing too. It even will pick up in the embossing glitter. I don't put a ton on my finger unless you want a big blob of it. It's not gonna work for me anyway. I really do like to antique things, and it's a little bit nicer when I can get it to just go on the highlights, but this works fine. It gives the look that I was looking for. Now I'm not going to put a whole lot on this big bubble, just around the outside of it. And I got a little bit more in, but that's okay. And I'm just showing you this whole thing in real time so you can see, I mean, how it really goes. I know sometimes people do things that are sped up because people don't want to sit there and watch the whole business, but I'm just thinking it's important to see real time sometimes. All right, I'm almost done with what I want to do. I'm gonna get this up here. There's one other thing I did with the ink too, as I did come back in and also highlighted it with some of the ink. But this, like I said, just doing a little bit of this adds, there we go. Okay, so that's kind of, looks kind of messy at the moment, but that's kind of like what I do. And then, like I said, I add the ink. Use the same paper. So I'm going to use a Tranquil Waters ink with a blending brush. I'm not losing the look of the background paper, but I'm going to also highlight that just a little bit. And I think I'm going to pull out the a little bit of the Woodland moss. So I'll use and it really depends on what your finished gel print looks like with what you want to do. Because you can add all colors and whatever you want to do to that. I think I am going to add just a little bit of the Woodland moss because I like the green in here. I think it's pretty. So okay, so I'm done with the background. That's good. So I want to show you now how to do the shaker part. Now I purchased several acrylic sheets, and I'm just going to show you, this is hard to see on here, but I want you to see that it's very pliable. It's not really stiff like some can be. So what I do is, and this is what's kind of cool about this, say for instance all of this glitter did not stay on here really great, then it gets to be inside of the shaker card. And I try to get as much of that stuff off of here as I can, and one really good way to do that is if you have like a Swiffer, this takes everything off before you go to put that on, and that works really well. All right, so then I center this on here, and you can kind of see you can see that on there. I've got wax all over my fingers now. Then I use score tape, and this score tape is, pretty sure it says 1/8 of an inch. And like I said, I center that as best I can. And all I do is I put that on of course it doesn't help me, I can't see this as well. There we go. I can see it through the camera, but I cannot see it for real, which is what I need. All right. Now I'm sure again you're gonna find there's people that do this different ways. This is just how I do it. All right, I'm gonna move that out of the way. And then across the bottom. And then one across the top. All right, gotta make sure you leave the top open, or what you want your top to be, so you can put your shaker bits inside. All right, so then I take the bottom one off. And when it cooperates, there we go. And then what I do is I take up the sides just a little bit because I have to pull that up and this will get stuck in it. There we go. And then I'm just going to do is that to it for right now to keep that to the side. All right, just like that. Of course, there's stuff on my, okay. All right, so I bring up the bottom and I make it flush to the bottom of that as best I can, and I push that down. Now you're gonna see this tape is gonna adhere to itself there. Okay, and I'm gonna need the tape back there to when I flip it over. So I come back in and I add a little bit of tape down here. I really like the score tape because I can just do it with my fingers. Because it used to be a long time ago, they only really had red line tape, and you had to use scissors every time. Red line tape's good, it's just you have to use scissors. Unless they've made it different since I've purchased it, which could happen. All right, so I'm just going to do one side at a time, and it doesn't really matter if these aren't perfectly straight either, just as long as they cover up your back of your project. Okay. And again, the same thing, I should have pulled this off and I didn't. Just like I did at the bottom. Actually, I can just take that off. It's not gonna matter. I just have to have a big enough pocket to get my shaker bits in. Try to line that bottom up as best you can. It doesn't overhang. All right, and again, I'm going to go ahead so I don't forget to put this tape up here so that I can, when I go to pull it over this other way. I think I am going to put it here. Could really put it in both places if I want, just to get it a little bit more secure. All right, I'm not going to take those off until I put the shaker bits in. All right, so now we have a pocket. And this pocket's a little bit smaller because I made the edges a little bit longer. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful of getting the shaker bits in. So I'm going to go ahead and put the shaker bits in, and I'll be right back. Okay, so to close this up, I did get the shaker bits in. And to close this up, I go ahead and pull those pieces off. Whoops. All right. And then just flip this one down like I did the other end to begin with. Just like that to secure that down. Okay, and that's our shaker bit. That's how you do your shaker bit. Now, if you're going to be attaching this to a card base, which I always do, I then use, because I want to make sure this stays down, I use, I don't know if this is a 1/2 inch. I don't think it is. I don't think it says on here. Anyway, I use a thicker one than the skinny. And what I do is I try to make sure this tape goes over the edge of what I just did so it catches it and keeps it down even more secure. Is it necessary? I just think it works really well. Okay, and then I am going to go ahead and do this little bit in here, just like that. And then that's all set up to be attached. Now, I am going to use my glitter paper, and it will be attached to this. But what I do, because glitter paper is a little bit more expensive, is as I go ahead and I cut this, and then what I do is I die cut out the center so I can use it on something else. So I'm going to go ahead and do this and show you what I mean. Okay, so I've got my card base put together, and I wanted to show you what I did. I used this die to cut out some of the excess, because I will use this for sentiment or for something else on another card, and it's not wasted behind. So I always try to make sure I don't have this long of a die, otherwise I would have cut more of that out. So I actually put more score tape back here because when I would flip this over, some of it would not attach, wouldn't be attached to this gold glitter paper, and I really wanted it to be secure to that. So I added more tape. So I just need to pull these all off. That one's hanging over, so I'll bend that down. But this just secures it a little bit better. At least I think it does. And these little bits here. Oops. Now, just like my other card, I hadn't figured out what I wanted to do for a sentiment, and I haven't for this one either. So I'm going to center this on here, and I've got that score tape, which is really nice tape that adheres well. I'm going to slide this stuff down so I can push this down a little bit better. There we go. So we have our basic shaker card. And that works really, really well. I think that background is perfect. And then I'm just gonna be adding this cute little, at least I can't really see that red anymore either, but I'll probably add something to it to tie in that. Oh, I know what I could do. That would probably be interesting to this, just to make that, just to show you, it bugs me. So I want to tie that in a little bit better. I am going to use the two inks that I had out and add a little bit of green to this one. I'm trying to think, green and pink. But I'm going to go ahead and add some. It tones it down just a little bit. See, yeah, I like that. And we still have our blue at the top, but I think I'm going to go ahead and even add a little bit of that blue. And you can always do this. You can adjust after you start doing this. It works. This is a Tranquil Waters. And I'm just going to add a little bit of that to the top of him, or her. Yeah. And that ties in pretty well with that now. Okay, so all I do for this to finish off the card is I use a little bit of double-sided foam tape, and I put that at the top. Like I said, I still need a sentiment, and I'm not really sure what that's going to be, but right now this is the card. And another suggestion, just to let you know, if you're making this for a birthday, somebody's special birthday that has a single digit, or the digits are connected together, you could do it that way. You could actually cut those out of glitter paper, put that in for part of your shaker bits. Like if this was for my granddaughter that's going to be 6 next year, I could have put the number 6 shaker bits inside of there using a die to cut out the number 6. There's a lot of things that you could do like that to make it a little bit more personal, because I know she would like to see the number 6 in here for her birthday next year. So even if I want to add a little bit of glitter to the top of our cute little jellyfish, I could. So anyway, there's our card for today. It was really fun. It took a little bit of time to show you the steps, but it's really doable. I think that you might enjoy making one. So thanks so much for stopping by. I'll have the products that I used in the description below.